Insiders, this is Laurie with a story here in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, about to do an interview with Rabbi Delcau, otherwise known as Rabbi D, at Temple Beth Shalom. Unbelievable journey that's brought me here. God had a plan, and I was not expecting to be hanging out with the congregation here at Temple Beth Shalom the last few days, but it's been life-changing. So I am confident you're going to enjoy the inside story of Rabbi D. What a cool guy. You know, from driving a Jeep to being a ski instructor, scuba diver instructor, you name it. He's traveled the world, but yet he finds that being here, leading this congregation, what a unique family, the way they welcome you. But his story is going to inspire you, and I'm confident you're going to love it. So hang on, and here we go. Good morning, Insiders. This is Laurie with the story. I have the honor and the amazing pleasure to sit next to Rabbi Delcau, otherwise known as Rabbi D. Thank you for being with us here this morning.
My honor, truly, really. I'm here with Laurie with a story, and as I always say, Shannon Sharp, my favorite, one of my favorite Broncos. I'm a huge Broncos fan. This guy has a podcast. Laurie, I am truly honored to be on a podcast now with you.
Well, it's only God's plan would be the fact that we're on a podcast together. We were laughing, talking about that if you said to me a few months ago I was going to have a podcast show and I'm going to sit next to Rabbi D and be at the beach at Fort Beach, Walton, Florida, I'd laugh. But that's where I am.
Hey, listen, Fort Walton has a plan, and God has brought you to us. That's what I think.
That's it. So let's dig in, because that's what I'm so passionate about, capturing your inside story. You as an individual, as well as the fact that you work on God's payroll, but this congregation, the people, and the community. It's just a year later to see what's happening. And we all know what has caused such a shift in the world, a societal shift, bringing more and more people to places like Florida and taking them out of my hometown of, I know it's not a town, but the state of, New Jersey. So a lot of people woke up and said, we need to go to the South.
Well, you're a Jersey girl, but we're glad to welcome you here. Don't worry, we'll convert you.
Well, and I'm proud to be a Jew, so at least I got that part absolutely covered for me, right? So, but that's another amazing part about your congregation. We're at Temple Beth Shalom this morning, capturing the story of Rabbi Delcau, otherwise Rabbi D. So my first question for you is really, I want to start with the fact that the congregation is Reform. And there are a lot of folks that might listen to this podcast and they're not Jewish. And I have walked around for years and have been a member of a congregation in Tennessee that is a Reform synagogue. But I said Reformed. And so teach us a little bit, if you would, because that is really who you are, a passionate teacher.
Well, thank you. I will have to say, so sometimes we even have people in the Reform movement with an M. We'll add an ED to it, and I have to remind us that it's not finished. We're constantly in a state of reforming the world. We see that from generation to generation, just in the way the world itself operates, but particularly when we see Judaism. I mean, we see this concept of the biblical Judaism that changed 70 CE when the temple itself was destroyed. The rabbis were always around the synagogue or the temple at that time, and for them, we have no place to sacrifice now. We have no place to do the Shalosh Regalim, the festivals that we need to engage in terms of our sacrifice and practice. The Kohanim, the high priest, and the Leviim, the Levites that would help. And there was nothing for them to do when there's no temple to sacrifice. And so the rabbis start to run with this concept. They need to reform what Judaism is going to look like. And they do that. They bring in the concept of interpretation of the Torah. What is it going to mean to find our understanding that's not specifically dealing with sacrifice? Maybe the sacrifice is going to be from the heart. Maybe the sacrifice is from our soul. So that begins this really big reforming out of biblical Judaism towards an understanding of what at that time was modern day. Now, a few thousand years later, we are in a different modern day. So that's why we call it this notion of reform, constantly changing for what the day and time requires of us, while not giving away our understanding of Torah, the mitzvot, and what it means to make the world a better place.
Absolutely. You were telling me something that I've already experienced being a member of a Reform congregation, is the fact that in the Jewish community, Reform is often referred to as the place you go and watch people play guitar. It's music, it's a concert.
Right.
And Insiders, by the way, if you're watching this episode, you'll get to see great pictures, a few that I took last night at an incredible Hanukkah celebration here at Temple Beth Shalom, where the rabbi not only was teaching, he played the trumpet, he was playing the guitar. When I first met him just a few days ago, I had to sit, and didn't have to, I wanted to, while he was restringing his guitar. I mean, and one of his favorite things to say is cats, like that cool cat plays this,
Right.
because he's a musician, he's a ski instructor, he's a scuba diver instructor, he's Mr. Adventure. I mean, it really, when the door opened and there was this cool, good-looking rabbi that's like with the awesome red Jeep in the parking lot, I thought, yeah, this is going to be a story. So they broke the mold when God created you.
Listen, God, I always say, God has a plan. I'm just along for the ride. That's it.
I'm stealing that quote. I really am, because God has a plan. I'm along for the ride. I'm sitting here in Florida with you. It's
That's
fantastic.
right.
And trust me, it has been hard. The weather's amazing.
It's great here.
But what's your vision for the synagogue? Let's tell the story. Have you tell us the story that 2 years ago, how they found you and brought you here to this synagogue?
Well, certainly, I was looking for my next calling. Look, in the Christian denominations, that you always hear this concept of that people have been called. I feel like I was called as a rabbi years ago when I was living in Jerusalem, and so ever since then, I really try to respond to what I feel like the next piece of my calling is. And I had said to myself I was going to be leaving the Pac Northwest. I've been around mountainous areas for a while. I've served coast to coast, different size congregations. And I really felt like if I wasn't going to be around the mountains, well, maybe I'd be around the beach. I'd never been able to be at a beach congregation. And I really said to myself, in this really very challenging time as we were all starting to enter this COVID, we didn't really know what that was going to mean and so forth. Well, whoever offered me a contract first, an ability to be in a congregation that seemed like it wanted to grow, it wanted to learn, it really had an aptitude for finding God, I thought, okay, well, that's where I'm going. That's where God wants me to be. And so I came here to interview, and it's a fantastic story. Many congregations along the East Coast are either merging with other congregations, closing down. We see this not only in Judaism, but really all organized religion, right?
Yes.
So having seen that, this group said, look, we're here in Florida. We think we have a great footprint in the area here in the Fort Walton, Destin area. Our beaches are beautiful, and they really are. I've been around the world, and the beaches, the water here, just an amazing place. And because of that, they said, we don't want to see this closed down. And so the community said, particularly led by our president, Chad Hill, a wonderful man, and he said, I'm going to go find a rabbi for us. And he, on his own, went and did some development, raised in a very small community. I mean, we have a solid, I'd like to tell you, we had 300 families here. We're building that. We have a solid 50 families here who are very committed to raising the congregation up to another level. And he said, we're going to raise this money. They raised me a contract. They brought me here. They interviewed me. I can still remember the day that we went through the interview. It was a wonderful time. Chad then processing with me, afterwards, basically said, look, I think you could be the one, and I think we'd like to offer you a contract pending the vote of the congregation. They voted it unanimously yes, and so God brought me here. That's my best take.
And keep in mind that, insiders, this was July 2020, a year that we all do not want to really spend any time in ever again, right?
Well, it happened actually even the fall before that as we were getting into the COVID.
Wow.
Right, it was right at the beginning of all of this uncertainty. Nobody knew what was going to be happening because to start at July 2020, it happened in the previous cycle.
Okay.
So it was really right in the middle of all of this, the finding me, the voting. I mean, nobody knew what was going to happen. And this congregation said, well, we're going to make a commitment. We're
to invest for the first, forgive me,
No, go. No.
But a full-time rabbi. This congregation's never had a full-time rabbi. So while congregations are, to your point, downsizing and it's virtual, and people are not attending the way they used to, and they went out and expanded their commitments to their team.
Absolutely. First full-time rabbi. This congregation for years and years had been a student rabbi pulpit. The students came from our Cincinnati campus, from the Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, and a lot of wonderful rabbis. Some of them who served here, the student rabbis, are now in other congregations across the country and are very well-known rabbis, by the way, this was their student pulpit. And but the group said, look, we're done with the student setup. We want to have a full-time rabbi. We believe we can build this. We believe we can grow at a time when other communities are waning. We have so much to offer, and we believe that this is a spot that Jews will want to be.
Yes, that's incredible. So let's dig into your inside story.
Okay.
You, as an individual, in fact, a father, and have two beautiful daughters in 7th and 9th grade, Shira and Maya.
Wonderful kids.
Right, and names that are taken from the Bible.
Sure.
Right,
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, well, look, when we were going to name our children, my ex-wife and I said, look, from that perspective, we wanted them to have meaning, and I always kind of have like a little drosh, as you say, always trying to do a little teaching. And so we named our first daughter Shira, partially for two reasons. One, my first year of rabbinical school, when I was there, my Ulpan teacher, our Hebrew teacher, Zohara, she had a wonderful little daughter that in the summer, she had this beautiful blonde hair, and she used to come to class, and sometimes she would sit on my lap, on my shoulders, and so forth, and her name was Shira. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful name. Shir in Hebrew means song. So, and as you can imagine, as a musician, guitar player, trumpet player, I thought, wow, I love that name. And then it dawned on me that we thought, well, we need another name to go with that. And we tied it closely to one of our grandparents, and we came out with it where it was going to be Avigail was going to be the middle name. We named them in the middle names for the grandparents. And so Avigail, Abba is father, Avi is my father, Gail is another way in Hebrew that we say rejoicement. So Shira Avigail is the song for which my father rejoices. And she gives that to me really every day, every time I get to interact with her. She's just wonderful. And our other daughter, when the second one came along, I love this name Maya, even though you see a lot in English. Really, we named ours from a perspective of Hebrew, but an acronym, not how they typically spell it in Hebrew, which my daughter...
I pronounced it wrong.
Yeah, my daughter typically has to remind people because we spell it Mem Yud Hey in the Hebrew. There's usually an aleph in there as well, but we don't have the aleph. We call it Ma Yafeh Hayom. How wonderful is today. So she's Maya Gabriela Delcau.
Amazing,
and so,
beautiful. I love that. And you threw in there again about the skiing and all the different things and the playing as a musician. So tell us more about you.
Ooh.
I mean, I don't think a lot of people, from growing up, rabbis work for God. And you,
Right.
You don't have a life outside that, right? I mean, it should be all-encompassing. But, years ago, to see a rabbi drive in a cool Jeep and then, being a scuba diver, like having a life and being a human
Right.
is not how we usually, put you all together as a part of just the rest of us get to have a life balance. But
Right.
Tell us about you.
Well, look, when I was called to the rabbinate, I had talked to a few other rabbis. In fact, I was living in Israel when it first happened, and I talked to a few people who I saw in the same kind of light, where maybe they had gone to whatever college they went to, or they went to Brandeis, or something along those lines, or they'd been really involved in youth group, and the next step was just applying to a seminary, applying to Hebrew Union College, applying to JTS, whatever that was going to be. And that just wasn't my path. I mean, I was a successful engineer. I worked for 2 Corps of Engineers districts. I worked for the Bureau of Reclamations. I did master's and my PhD work, although ABD in my dissertation, but all of that at Colorado State. And so I had all of these things that were happening that wasn't the rabbinate. And I was really blessed because growing up in Tennessee through scouting.
We didn't even touch that. He's from Tennessee.
There you go.
Right. Mm-hmm.
A northerner, my parents were from New York. They moved to the South. And, growing up in Nashville, I actually, through scouting, I'm an Eagle Scout. I don't know if I told you that.
You did not.
So I'm an Eagle Scout. And while I was in scouting, I met this great guy, Dennis Salisbury, who was at Neptune Diving and Ski. I think it's still going there in Nashville. And when I was in my youth, he hired me, and I worked for him for 6 years. So I got to learn scuba diving, snow skiing, and I became an instructor in both. I did all the technical stuff. I sold on the floor. He really gave me he took me to Europe with him to ski in Italy and Austria. I got to, he had a dive boat that he docked on the Miami River down in South Florida. He used to take me to the Bahamas with him. I mean, I really had things that a kid that coming from my my walk of life. I mean, my parents weren't rich, and coming from that walk of life, I was allowed to and afforded the ability to do things that I just had never done. So I did all these high adventure things and so forth. And and later when I moved to Colorado, hiking and backpacking and kept up all my snow skiing, all these kind of things. And I find God anywhere I go. And specifically, we talk about finding God in nature. I'd been doing that since I was a kid. And so bringing these things to who and what I have been as a rabbi, it's just natural to me. It's not a forced thing. I don't have to figure out about, oh yeah, what's it like to go mountain biking? I have a mountain bike. I do that. When people talk about, oh, what's it like to find, things diving, I feel blessed when I see I'm in God's realm under the water. All of these concepts. So this is really who I am. And so, in fact, the Jeep situation is really funny. This is my second Jeep. This was my dad's Jeep. I love Shalom when he passed away a few years ago. But I had a Wrangler before I went to rabbinical school, and people used to laugh at me. They used to say to me, look, you're going to be parked in the parking lot out there when for services, and people are going to say, oh, is that the rabbi's BMW or Mercedes parked over there, right? And that's right. And I was going to say, they would say, no, see that jacked up Jeep in the corner? That's his car.
But to your point, you said, I want to be known as humble. I'm just, working for God. It's not a matter of creating an image for yourself. Why do I want to capture your inside story? Is because the way that you're like, I'm not driving something to prove something. The material things are not important to you in that capacity.
No, I mean, look, I gave a sermon one time when I was in rabbinical school, talking about there's a Mishnah that the rabbis talk about in Pirkei Avot, that when we pass away, the worms are still going to be there. Mm-hmm. Okay, we all die the same way, afar la afar, dust to dust, right? And I gave a sermon, even talked about Michael Jordan. I can expounded on it. Michael Jordan's the best basketball player I have ever seen in my life. Sorry, LeBron. Best basketball player I've ever seen in my life. I mean, that 6 for 6 in title games. The guy was amazing. 6 MVPs. Nobody could check him in the NBA. He was a great man. At a time when in my generation when we all played basketball, everybody wanted to. And you heard the commercial, "Be like Mike," right? I want to be like Mike. That was the song. Yet at the end of the day, Michael Jordan puts his pants on and takes them off the same way we do. At the end of the day, when he goes to the grave, he can't take that money with him, okay? And God willing, he's given enough of it away to make the world a better place. At least I hope and pray that he's done that, right? But we're all in that same position, okay? When we go to the Shemaima, when we go to the heavens, when we go wherever our souls are going to go, God's not going to check in and say, how much money do you have? I think God's going to check in and say, what did you do to make the world a better place?
Yes, as you would say, how many lives have you touched?
That's it.
Right? So, and speaking of lives that you're touching, I mean, just a few days that walking into your congregation, Friday night services for Shabbat, and the way that people speak about how they feel, it's a home here. So, what's the future of Temple Beth Shalom?
Well, look, we'd like to say that we're here doing God's work and we're trying to grow. And I think we are. Look, for one thing, you came to visit us, and I think that's a very special place to be. This really is like a family. I think a lot of the smaller congregations tend to be that way, a little more family-oriented. Yes. This group is very interesting because we're in a community that is really had been made up of a lot of retired military. Okay, people, once the military, the Air Force, some of the Navy people, even some of the Army people figured out about what was going on here in the Fort Walton Destin area. This is where they wanted to retire. So we have quite a few here that are members of our congregation. That's right, Jews that have been in the military. We're not talking a lot about that these days, but we certainly have those. Yes. And so, and that group certainly has sustained our community, but there are many who've been living and grew up in this community. Look, the Fleets, Judge Fleet was here for generations. And a wonderful man. In fact, he was here last night for our Hanukkah program. His son, Bart, wonderful man, a lawyer here in town, and he plays bass with us in our group. Just a great town, and we have a number of those type of people, and it's just a home for them. They feel like this is home when they walk into this building. It's not just for them. To do the obligation. Yeah, I went to Friday night services. That's right. Or I was a good Jew this week. So, That's right. For them, it's, they come because, yes, prayer is important, And they know I would say that. They know it's one of the mitzvot. They know that I would couch it from Torah. But for them, not even but, and for them, it's an additional piece of finding their family, finding their group that they want to pray with, the group that they want to share Torah with. When we come, you studied with us a little bit on Shabbat morning there, right? And these are some of our people, and some of them weren't there because they're just out of town or they're coming back or whatever it was.
But you're on Facebook Live.
We're on Facebook Live,
right?
And
and you're creating that virtual ability for even at nighttime, and how sensitive you are, and even your community of making sure that everyone can participate, picking each other up, bringing each other here, and so forth.
Yeah, and that's because, look, a lot of the people, they want to be in that community. They want to be studying. So, again, here we had a couple people that were on Zoom and Facebook that were studying with us. And I get now people from across the country, people who I've served with in other congregations that will tune in. Even the Facebook Friday night services, once they go onto Facebook to my page, I have people that actually watch them as their Saturday morning or their Saturday service. And they tell me, Rabbi, I didn't watch on Friday night, so you didn't see my name then, but I watch on Saturday morning. I even have non-Jews who I was in high school with that write me and say, I watch your service every week.
You, in a small community, as your mom would say, I'm going to quote Mrs. D, Mrs. Delcau, she sat next to me Friday night services and said, we are tiny, but we are mighty.
That's
right?
True.
So
that's true.
Your reach is so much, it's grander now, right?
I would agree.
There are folks that are here that don't even know about Temple Beth Shalom and the power of the experience. And I haven't been to a lot of synagogues, but enough. And growing up in a conservative synagogue environment, and then coming to Tennessee 14 years ago, this was incredibly special. I mean, I left Friday night services and thought, this is really a very unique God's home. So with that, expand upon, I should also stop and mention that a big thanks to our sponsors for today's show, CNR Services, we thank you, and for the rest of our sponsors, QTAC Rock and Benefits Group and Quick Cuts Media, so you'll see their information. But
come visit us here in Fort Walton. We'll bring them down. We'll Rabbi, I'll take them for a personal tour around the beach. We love you.
Let's do the 30-second commercial. You can be reached at the website, which is, I'm going to cheat and look at my notes, tbsfwb.com, which is Temple Beth Shalom, FortWaltonBeach.com. So take the initial or the first letter of each of those words, tbsfwb.com, to check out the website. Great story, great information. Or you can call them on the phone at area code 850-862-6086. I'll say it one more time. Area code 850-862-6086. So,
and by the way, if you get into the area, you can even find me personally. People know my number around here: 786-71-RABBI. 786-71-RABBI. You can always find me around. Text me if I'm at a meeting or something else. I'll text you back, and we'll try to get together.
You see, insiders, what a cool cat he is. I just had to do it. I had to throw it in there. So, but something important that I wanted to talk about is where your heart lies with the One Hopeful place. And there's another organization, and forgive me, that
Opportunity Place, right?
Yes. You're really passionate about these organizations, and as a board member and a religious leader here in the community, tell us a little bit about these.
Sure. Well, look, when I got here, we certainly had a lot of congregants that were doing what I call Gimilut Chasadim, acts of love and kindness. No doubt about it, the Torah calls us to make the world a better place. Our congregants hear me say it all the time, and essentially it's like put your money where your mouth is. But of course, money comes in the 3 T's, right? Time, treasure, and talent. So you got
that.
one.
Say it again. That's a good quote.
Right, 3 T's: time, treasure, talent.
Love it.
Okay, so it comes in one of those ways. And when we got here, I wanted to be doing something as a community, and we weren't doing anything as a community. So I got involved, and for one thing, I got involved with One Hopeful Place, and I sit on the board, as you said, for this. And One Hopeful Place is the true understanding of the homeless community. I mean, we have homeless that are here on the streets, and it's our calling, not only mine, but all of our clergy here, to make sure that we do what God would want us to do to help these people.
Yes.
And again, I grew up out in the country in Cheatham County, outside Nashville. I wasn't in the glitz and the light and all of these kind of things. I grew up with people who were had some cash. I grew up with people who had a little bit and people who didn't have any. I mean, look, one of our great wide receivers who played on the high school football team, that guy, he used to ride his bike to school every day, and it was about 10, 12 miles at least.
Wow.
And it wasn't a great bike back then because he had to stay for football practice and then ride home, whether it was dark or not. I mean, he did that every day, right? So these are the kind of people I grew up with, and I wanted to make sure that we're constantly taking care of, making sure that we do what the Torah calls for. So One Hopeful Place, what we're doing there is we bring in the homeless, helping to bring them off the street, and we're trying to help them build their life. So we have about 50, 60 beds in there right now. We're trying to expand that. And they,
It's sad, though, that we can fill those beds. I'm sorry.
Oh, it is.
Right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, how about more beds? No, that means more homeless people, right?
And we have them, by the way. So we're trying to work through that process on so many levels because, look, the homeless, when they come here, rather than spend the winter in New Jersey or New York or these kind of people feel like, hey, you guys figured out that living on the Emerald Coast is a great place to live. And we figured that out, too. We just can't live like you can live, right? And some of them have been here for a while, too. And so what do we do to help them try? And, of course, some of these things have to deal with psychological issues. It could be addiction issues, all the things that we think about. And so we are bringing them into the fold with the help of another group that we have here called Bridgeway that really tries to help us deal with all of these different issues, giving them a place to live, giving them, the ability to eat and to stay warm and so forth. And we even have a cold weather project for those people who haven't found their way to make it in like that because, there's a commitment to coming off of the street. When it gets cold, we have another project that our group here deals with that's hosted at One Hopeful Place where it drops below 40 degrees. We have a number of congregations. We have Monday nights where we cook and then bring our food out there, and then we serve 30, 35 people that come off the street that aren't part of the main house people.
But think about this. Your community is tiny but mighty right now, and there's probably not one member that's not active. And in most congregation, that's not common. And so you just said Monday nights, you're all gathering, cooking to help those that are less fortunate. This is really a powerful, unique family that you have here. So
wonderful, very, very unique, very, very powerful. And even in the other project, we have Opportunity Place. Opportunity Place sort of like that, but really is a family type place. We used to maybe have called it a women's shelter, but now we do it more of a family kind of concept. These are people who have got off their game and are trying to really make it back, and they're much more advanced than the group that we would get at One Hopeful Place in many ways. And so we work there too. The first Thursday of the month, we do the same thing. We bring food for them, or we volunteer to help. Even my girls are here in the summertime. When my girls are here all summer, they volunteer every single Wednesday. They work in Opportunity Place, helping organize things. They built a little kitchen, a little playroom for the little kids that are there that are part of this because these are families. They organize their food pantry. They help unload the food trucks that come to them. I mean, so this is truly a family-oriented community. It's a community that cares about each other on so many levels, not just in our congregation, many congregations, all the way to the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, these are people that are living an old school, kind of how I grew up in Tennessee life.
That's amazing. And still, I mean, we had a conversation last Thursday, or this past Thursday, and you were able to recite so many areas of Tennessee, and you know it better than I do, and yet I've been there, and it's just, again, God works in mysterious ways, right? So, but Fort Walton Beach is lots of changes happening. You were telling about the community, the investment, the growing, and the expanding. So.
Sure. Well, look, it's a funny story. I mean, truly. I came back. I used to come, as I said, as a kid when I was working at Neptune. We would sometimes run dive trips down here. And by the time I was 18, I was running them by myself. A van, you'd see me coming down the freeway with a U-Haul type trailer with filled with scuba gear and and everything. And we'd meet either here or down in Panama City, wherever we were going to be taking boats from. And we'd come through these areas. And for instance, Destin, when I was a kid, there was nothing there. There, a few little restaurants or something. There was nothing, not like what we have over there now. I assure you. And then Fort Walton, you know, we had the kind of the main mall that was here in Fort Walton, and everybody was kind of here doing that, and it was just the way it was. Well, I came back to interview 30 years later, and Fort Walton was like time stood still. I was like, what? Where's the change over here?
Right. Where's the enhancement? Where's the
Yeah.
improvement? How do we get with the times?
Exactly. So I have a very good friend, Ted Cochran, who I've met here, who's the head of the Chamber of Commerce. And in fact, I work with him on the One Hopeful Place project.
Wonderful.
And yeah, he's a great guy. Ted's a doer. He's been, I don't know, maybe 15 years or something. And he said, well, Rabbi, he said, look, a lot of these people that did all the things when you were a kid, that generation is waned out. And it's like, it's time for us, the new people to kind of help do whatever we do kind of thing. And it's so like, we're like this next wave. And he said, you want to know what the change is going to be? You're here, and bring more like you and like me. We do what we do,
And insiders, I have to tell you that Rabbi D has definitely, my nickname Laurie with the story. This is Rabbi with the story. I mean, he puts me to shame. This man is a connector. He has relationships, and that's who you are. I mean, yes, you're a cool cat, but you also definitely have, the people, because it matters to you. And you were talking about it's just, you're not doing God's work because you had to. It's just part of who you are, that you're always making friends. So.
Well, look, I mean, I think that's part of coming back to the South. This is the first Southern calling I've had. I've been in the Northeast. I've been in the Midwest. I've been in Colorado. I've been in the Pac Northwest. I've lived in Los Angeles. I mean, I've lived all over, the country and the world. And coming back to the South was a little bit like coming home, if I could say that. First of all, I have this wonderful, Hebrew accent that you get here speaking in the South, right? And so. But I mean, it really is that kind of small town, small community type feel. All the people that I grew up with out in the country, and that's what I learned from them. The kind of things that we do to make community, that we do to make life, that we do to really be what God, I believe, wants us to be, not only making the world a better place, but living it in that way. Yes. And that's what I think we have here. It's just it's a little bit different vibe than other places.
It's so, I mean, having the phone conversation with you, I was sold. I thought I have to meet this rabbi. I mean, the story and how we connected, it was a God moment, and the fact that this synagogue, the purpose of having this interview today, I hope that we will reach the Jewish community who maybe isn't a part of a synagogue. The kids are grown typically, like myself. The kids have come through Hebrew school. They've had their bar and bat mitzvahs, and we get disconnected. We're not pursuing that weekly visit at the temple, and our spiritual part of our life. In the last few years, people are screaming for it, and you create such an environment that insiders take a moment and check this out. And I mean, if you're a beach lover the way I am, I just think you're going to fall in love, and you will feel that the people, when you walk through the door, they absolutely want you to feel like you're at home. It's family here.
Yeah, I mean that's really the board's intent. Look, we have a gradation of people even on the board and in the community, even though these 50 families that we have here. Some of them are newer in the last decade or less, and some of them have been here for a really long time. Like the congregation started in 1985. And some of the great early members, a few of them are still left.
I met some of them last night.
That's right.
At the event. Amazing.
Some of them are still left, and they're very passionate about it. They want to hand this community feeling. They want to hand this family that they have to the next generation. Look, some of them are in their 80s and 90s now, and few are passing away here in the last few years. And so this is an important time not only for me, but for them, for our family here, and for what it means to continue to share Judaism in the way that they believed was important in a different field than probably most any place that you've seen, really. This type of beach life, this love for family, this love for God, this love for finding what God gives us. Several of our congregants are boaters, and you go out with them on their boats, and they feel life in a different way. They feel it in a context of look at this gift that God gives us. And you're going along and you might see dolphin come up and these kind of things. And it's not just a tour for them. It's like you said, these are God moments that they build their life around.
Absolutely. And your members from Reform to Orthodox, which is unusual. And then even how you observe, Rabbi, please, would you expand upon that so that insiders, we believe we're hearing you, that as a community, that the folks that are tuned in right now are at a place where it's not about climbing a ladder and a career and how much money I make. They're saying, I need passion to wake up, and what am I doing it for? What am I living life for? So take us through that really from Reform to Orthodox, how you lead your life and those that are here.
Sure. So I would say people, if they, when people really talk about me, they talk about somebody who's probably a little more post-denominational. And I don't worry about teaching Reform Judaism, Conservative Judaism, Orthodoxy. I just teach Judaism. There's nothing that I teach that you would not find any rabbi in any movement, in any place teaching. I teach Torah, I teach commentaries, I teach Talmud, all of these kind of things because I teach Judaism. And from that perspective, that's why I think, some of our congregants, as you mentioned, grew up in the Reform movement, some in the Conservative, some, parents and grandparents were Orthodox. And for them, the fact that the rabbi wears a kippah and that the rabbi keeps kashrut and that the rabbi, really tries to live the Torah as best as he can, from that perspective, and davens his tefillin and wears a talit gadol, these are the kind of concepts that they believe in, because they don't have to worry about, I'm a Reform, Conservative. That doesn't really make a difference. We call ourselves a Reformed congregation. I'm a pretty traditional practicing Reformed rabbi. And having said that, I think that I'm kind of a bridge really between all of these types of denominations so that people are able to find a place that they can feel and call home. Well, we have the ability to do that. Look, even in our Friday night service when we're doing our stuff with a guitar or even adding a piano or whatever we do to it, there's davening in there. And there are even other nights where I don't play guitar hardly at all, and I just lead a lot of davening and reading because I do have members who like to be a little bit, or with a little bit less string action, if you want, and I want to try and give that to them as well. And we have the ability here on Shabbat morning to do more of a conservative type service where we lead services and can read Torah and can be here and these kind of things. So we just try to, we don't worry about the wording, Reform, Conservative. We just bring the Judaism.
What was really unique too, everything you're saying, there's a part that I learned just in a few days about the conversion rate. There are members that in a small community, tiny but mighty, that have converted, and often when people, as you could expand more than I could, Rabbi, that people who convert, they weren't born a Jew, they chose Judaism as for their spiritual path. So, and they are educated and typically 10 times more aware of the religious traditions and beliefs, more so than even someone like myself, born a Jew, mom and dad being Jewish. And so I was born a Jew because God said you'll be a Jew. But it wasn't because I made the choice to. I was born this way. So talk a little bit about your passion, not to convert people, but to support that because all people is who you talk to, who you educate, and you're spiritually called to support.
Sure. Well, look, it's no secret that a lot of congregations who have Jews by choice, people who find Judaism because this is their path, this is their journey, a lot of those people turn out to be the most involved congregants in those congregations. It's no surprise. We've seen that for years across all of these modern denominations of Judaism. No doubt about that. Having said that, we have a number of them here, and a number of very learned ones who found their path to Judaism, and their path includes some of the most well-read Jews that you've ever seen in your life. I mean, they've read Tanakh cover to cover. Some of them, they're studying rabbinic literature, they're studying theology, they're studying, modern prayer and so forth. And when I bring concepts to it, I mean, they dig into these concepts. It's a group that really loves and likes to learn. They all read my column every week or every month in our newsletter. And to the fact that I bring some kind of piece of rabbinic literature and build on that, they love these kind of concepts because this is why they made the journey. This is why they found their path. And because of that, they have taken it upon themselves to want to be the staple or one of the staples of our community, because they say, hey, listen, we found this. Other people may find this meaningful as well. And I find here in the South, look, I'm a universal speaker to God. And from my perspective, if I can help somebody be on a spiritual path and find a path to a higher metaphysical presence, I think that's special. I hold that very close to my soul. And I find that a lot of people are looking for that. They're not looking for some, this is the way it's always been, or, what is that? All I can do is offer what Judaism teaches. And that's a relationship between you and God, and it's different for every person, whatever that means, he, she, it, we, they, whatever that's going to be for you, and our goal of making the world a better place. And if that's a meaningful type move for you, we're all in together.
Awesome, and as we get to a place where we're going to wrap up this interview, but may there be many more, and that I get to have more time with you, Rabbi. And again, thank you for being with us today on the Inside Story Hunters show. You can find more about Temple Beth Shalom here in Fort Walton Beach at the website tbsfwb.com, or you can reach the Rabbi at
786-71-RABBI. Awesome. 786-71-RABBI.
So, Insiders, isn't he a cool cat? And just absolute pleasure to be here with you, Rabbi. And
God willing, Laurie, we're gonna move her right here to the Emerald Coast.
Yeah,
we got to find her. We got to find her a nice palace right here, out here on the beach or something, so that she can enjoy these wonderful waters. And we got to house this amazing person sometime down here with us too.
From your lips to God's ears, as you say.
Love it.
And on that, I just, again, thank you for being a life changer, a life saver, and a man doing amazing God's work. So
thank you, Laurie. Truly my honor. Truly.
So, all right, Insiders, thanks for being with us. Take good care.